Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Red Pill Garage. On today's episode, I'll be working on a Holden V8 Commodore Series 2 with a 6-litre L77 motor. Does your V8 Commodore have a squeak or a squeal coming from the motor? And you've changed your belts and your pulleys and the noise is still there? Well, today I'm going to show you guys how to find the problem and fix it. For the guys that don't know out there, these L77 motors, it's a common problem for these harmonic balancers to fail. And as it begins to fail, it can no longer absorb the engine harmonics or vibrations. This will cause the engine to shake excessively and become dangerous to the engine at higher speeds. If you look here closely, you can actually see the wobble in the harmonic balancer. You're probably thinking, what's causing this problem? Well, I can honestly say that these harmonic balancer bolts were never correctly torqued up from factory during assembly, and also a failure to use some type of thread locker, resulting in the bolt working its way loose. Okay, the tools needed for this job is a 1/2 inch impact gun, a 1/2 inch torque wrench, a universal pulley holding tool, and it's adjustable as well for different size pulleys. Next we have our flexible hose clamp pliers. This comes really handy for doing difficult hose clamps, and it can also save you a lot of pain too. A couple of mallets, anti-seize grease, silicone spray WD-40, brake cleaner and 243 thread locker, pre-assembly lubricant, telescopic mirror, flat blade screwdriver, a flexible 7mm driver, 15 ring spanner, 13mm combination spanner and a 10mm spanner, and 1/2 inch breaker bar and ratchet, hose clamp pliers, a torch, a 27mm socket, 24mm extension and a 15mm socket and a hose clamp, harmonic balancer removal toolkit and our harmonic balancer. And don't forget your safety glasses. Okay, the first thing you want to do is remove the engine beauty cover. And then release the locking clips for the air cleaner cover. And then the airflow meter. And next I need to disconnect the air hose, and it's just a matter of squeezing those perforated sides together or pinching them in together, and that should release the locking tab. And you can see by squeezing the sides together, it actually elongates that circle, which releases the locking tabs. And next I'm going to unwind the hose clamp around the throttle body, and then just remove the whole thing as one piece. Okay, next with the 15mm spanner I'm going to release the serpentine belt and remove it out of the car. And it's probably a good idea before you do this, you actually draw it out on paper so you know exactly which way it goes back on when it's time to put back on the car. And also check the belt for any cracks, because now's the time to order a new one if it's got cracks on it. Okay, next we're going to remove the air conditioning belt with our breaker bar, extension bar and a 15mm socket. And you also want to check the condition of that belt also, just make sure there's no cracks on the belt, and if there is, just replace it. Okay, next I'm going to disconnect the main plug for the thermofans. Just a matter of pushing that tab down and pulling the wiring harness back. And just have a quick look inside that harness, make sure there's no corrosion, because that's one reason why the fans don't kick in when there's corrosion on those terminals. Okay, next I'm going to unscrew the two 10mm bolts that hold the fan shroud in place. Okay, next with our flexible hose clamp pliers, we need to remove that hose clamp, attach one side to that wing and one side on the other wing, and then we're going to squeeze it together to release that hose clamp. And you can see how that works. Once it's attached, it's just a matter of squeezing the pliers together and it releases the tension. And what you can find, sometimes these clamps are a bit stubborn to slide back, so you need to spray some silicone lubricant on there and then it should slide back nice and easy. Just like that. Okay, next pull the radiator hose back, and by doing it this way you will lose very little coolant rather than pulling the whole hose off. And just tuck it underneath the power steering hose, so this way there's very little spillage. Okay, same thing with the radiator overflow hose, just remove that out of the way and you can wrap that around the overflow bottle, so this way it's just tucked out of the way. And now it's time to pull out the thermofan assembly. Always a one-piece unit. And there's the harmonic balancer bolt and the pulley. And next with the impact gun, we're going to unscrew that harmonic balancer bolt. And as you can hear from that impact gun, there was very little effort needed to unscrew that bolt. It should be much tighter than that. And you can see there's absolutely no thread locker on those threads. Okay, this is the harmonic balancer removal toolkit that I use, a HBT K002. And this is the harmonic balancer, a HB1117N. And you can see there it does the 6-litre L77 engine. And that's the spec sheet with the toolkit. It does a 6-litre, and we're supposed to use the right legs number 2. And that's it there, number 2. Not sure if you guys can see that properly or not. And those lines on the top there, they're basically for alignment, so you get all 3 of those bolts lined up. So when you go to unscrew it, it unscrews evenly, it doesn't kink to one side or slip off. Because you can actually break the tool if it's not centered correctly. And you can see how that works, that tucks in behind. And that's the main bolt that goes through the center of the tool. It's got an O-ring on there, and that's the washer that goes up against the crankshaft. And that's what it looks like once it's all put together. This way it gives you an idea on how it works. And now it's time to get the old one off the motor. I've just sped the video up here, not to bore you guys. Just make sure when unscrewing that harmonic balancer you hang on to it pretty tight, because it is quite heavy and you don't want to go dropping it on any components on the engine or the radiator itself. And there's our old and new harmonic balancers, and that there is called a friction shim. And the new Dayco harmonic balancer is actually designed to work without that friction shim, so don't go removing the old one and forcing onto the new one, because what you'll probably find, it won't even fit anyway. And that's what that friction shim looks like. So like I said, it's designed to work without it. Okay, next you want to spray a little bit of brake cleaner on the surface there to wipe off that waxy residue inside and outside, and that's what it should look like once you're done. And next, just give the seal a quick wipe down, make sure there's no grit on there, and then you can apply some grease on the inside, the pre-assembly grease that is. Okay, next I'm going to apply a very thin film of Copperese anti-seize grease on the inside of that harmonic balancer. And you just need a very tiny amount. Okay, next, this is where it starts to get interesting. Now what you want to do is push that harmonic balancer on by hand, just enough where it's going to stay there by itself. You won't be able to push it in by hand all the way in, just at the very beginning, maybe about a mil or two, if that. Then next what you want to do is get your harmonic balancer bolt and your Loctite, 243 medium strength. Just apply a little on the threads. Okay, this next step, you're probably wondering, why isn't it catching any threads? What you'll have to do is get out either your rubber mallet or your copper mallet, and you'll have to start to partially hit that pulley on there, just enough where you can catch some threads, and then screw it in with a ratchet. This might take a little bit of time, but just be patient and take your time with it, not to cause any damage. And just make sure you only hit the inside of the balancer, not the outer side of the balancer, and don't go using any pipes to try and lever it in, because you'll bend the balancer and it'll have a wobble in it again. And when tightening up that bolt, certainly don't use an impact gun, because there's a good chance you could actually break the harmonic balancer bolt, and then you'll be mad as a cut snake. Okay, once you've set your torque wrench to 150 Newton meters of torque, you will need to grab the universal pulley holding tool. Then you can apply your pressure, and then you'll hear a clicking noise, and that's enough. And you don't want to go any more than that. Okay, next I'm going to refit the air conditioning belt. And just make sure the ribs of the serpentine belt are sitting correctly on the ribs of the harmonic balancer. And just feel your way around to make sure it's sitting on there correctly. And then finally you can double check with a mirror and a torch just to make sure it's sitting on there properly. And now it's time to fit the main serpentine belt. And the same rules apply here. You want to make sure that serpentine belt is sitting correctly on all those pulleys. And by checking with the mirror, you can easily see that. Otherwise, you can just feel your way around there if you don't have a telescopic mirror. Okay, next you have the 3 locators on the fan shroud. And you want to make sure they slide in on the radiator locators. at the bottom of the radiator. You got one there, and the second one's in the middle, and the third one on the side again. So you've got to make sure the fan shroud locators slide into the locators on the radiator just there. Once you get it in there, and if you're not sure about them lining up with the locators, you can grab the bottom of the fan shroud and just jiggle it backwards and forwards, and then you'll know if it's actually in there properly or not. And there's the top lock. You want to make sure that snaps into place. Okay, next we're going to remove the hose clamp. It's a spring steel one, and we're going to use our special pliers. You want to make sure you're wearing your safety glasses when doing this, because those spring steel clamps, if you're not using the correct pliers, they can fly off. They're special pliers designed for those clamps. On goes the hose with the new clamp, and now the connector for the thermofans, and that should just snap into place. Next, our mounting bolts for our fan shroud. They only need to be nipped up, so don't do them up too tight. You don't want to go breaking the top of the radiator off. Okay, next the radiator overflow bottle hose. Okay, next the air induction assembly. Mass airflow meter plug, and that should just snap into place. Then the air cleaner box lid clips. You want to make sure the air filter is sitting in there pretty straight, it's not kinked on one side. The throttle body hose clamp. And you want to put that air pipe on last, because if you put it on first you can't access that hose clamp. And that would just snap into place also. And finally, don't forget to top up your radiator fluid. On goes the cap. And finally, the moment of the truth. And we have a winner. Look at that, it's nice and straight, there's no more wobble in that. The gentleman that owns this car is going to be absolutely stoked. He'll be pretty happy about this now. Okay, next goes on the engine beauty cover. And finally, it's ready for a test drive. And so now you know how to replace a harmonic balancer on an L17 motor. And so guys, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button not to miss out on any future videos. And I'll see you on the next episode of Red Pill Garage. Thank you for watching.